Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Do not be fooled by that fancy name. It's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And oh my, you can tell from the title that this is a big get for me. Uh, I'm going to giggle throughout the entire period that we're doing this show. But guest today is Graig Kreindler, who is, I mean, if you don't know who Graig Kreindler is, you should know, right now, go to his website and look at his art pieces. I guess he's the art historian of Major League Baseball because his works are striking. We're going to see some of them today. We're only going to touch on his career, but in terms of just touching you, getting down to what it means to be a baseball fan, history of the game, all these kinds of things. It's just amazing experience, and I am so happy that he's on, and I'm going to bring him on now instead of having me ramble on. But good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you very, very much for coming on the show. When I told my other YouTube creator guys and baseball card friends that, oh yeah, I'm interviewing Graig Kreindler tomorrow morning, people are like, what?
I was like, what? Yeah. Why?
Well, we'll see. I know that one of your excellent attributes is that you are a humble man, but I don't know that you know how widely people know about the work and how I've had chains on text threads just talking about a particular piece.
Really?
And, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I'm not making this up.
Wow.
But one of the funny things was you and I were just talking, before we hit record, about you had a piece in the Love of the Game auctions. And there was a whole thread that we were talking about, pooling our money and trying to get in there, but it just
oh my God.
didn't happen. So, So it is a baseball card channel, and one of the great things about your origin story is that it starts essentially with baseball cards, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So go ahead. Tell us about how baseball cards started off where we find ourselves now with you being sort of the preeminent art historian of baseball.
Oh, man. Your intro is very nice. Too nice. Yeah, I mean, it starts with my dad's baseball card collection. I mean, when I was growing up in the 80s, the first stuff that I kind of started to draw was stuff based on the cartoons that I was watching at the time. So like He-Man and Thundercats and G.I. Joe, stuff like that really interested me. But I discovered my dad's, or at least what was left of my dad's baseball card collection, probably, when I was 4 or 5 or something like that. And, my dad was born in 44, New York City kid, typical, collectors collecting in the late 40s, early 50s, and typical collecting story. And that mom throws out the majority of the cards at some point during his life. But he still had, I think there were 2 binders that he had that were filled with, I guess, some highlights or stuff that at least that he was able to save. And it was mainly, there was one binder that was specifically Yankee based and one binder that was just kind of like, random star cards or whatever. But in the Yankee binder, I remember it going, as far back as probably, I think the earliest ones he had were the 49 Bowmans. But he had a lot of 50s. He had a lot of 51s, one of which was the Mantle card. And
nice.
Yeah. I remember I used to talk to him about it. And, that's kind of like how I discovered that Mickey Mantle was his hero growing up, as so many of his generation can agree with. And I think at the time, I had kind of started collecting cards myself. So I think the intrinsic nature of the cards was something I was aware of. but more than anything, I just knew that the card had a lot of sentimental value to him. So it was kind of like, Dad, this card I just looked up in a whatever price guide or whatever. You can get a couple $1,000s for this or something like that, which, to like a 5, 6-year-old kid is a gajillion dollars. And he's like, no, I'll never sell it. And, to this day, he still has it, which I'm so, so happy about. But, yeah,
he still has a 51 Mantle?
Yeah, nice. He has the same 51 Mantle that he opened, from a pack himself, which is so cool.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, the condition is not good, but doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He had a couple of other really nice ones, like he had a 53, or still has a 53 Bowman Mantle, that's his favorite set of all time, the color set. And that one is really, really sharp, centered really well, color registration. It's gorgeous. I think he had it graded by PSA, and I think it was like an 8 OC. So
wow.
At the qualifier, but it's still nice. But yeah, I mean, so when I saw those cards as a kid, as your audience knows, most of the late 40s, early 50s card issues were illustrated. So they, with the exception, I guess, of 53, you weren't really using straight photography. And I think something kind of clicked in my head that I could draw these ball players. I wasn't thinking like something that I would do down the line, for a job or whatever, but it was just kind of like, can I draw Mickey Mantle for my dad and, get like the proverbial pat on the head. And that's kind of how it started. I mean, I think he liked the fact that I was interested in those ball players. My early attempts at drawing Mantle were not the best, and I remember showing him some of those drawings and getting so frustrated because he would say that it wouldn't look like him, and he's just being honest, which is hilarious. And my mother would get like so mad at him. She's like, "No, you got to encourage your son. What are you doing?" But to this day, it's like,
Mom was right.
You're right. She's right, but he's also right. So to this day, it's like if I'm ever painting Mantle, which is semi-frequently, I have to show Dad and make sure that it looks like him.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, baseball cards were a big part of it.
So I guess at some point you go to SVA, right? School of Visual Arts.
Yes.
And then at some point you're in that education period, you decide to go back to drawing or not drawing, painting, baseball, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had gone to SVA originally to be a science fiction fantasy book cover illustrator. That was kind of the artwork that I was into at the time. I wasn't necessarily into the literature, which I probably should have been, but yeah, baseball was, when I got a little older and went through adolescence, baseball kind of was bumped aside by other things. I think I was probably more into comic books and being ignored by girls. Really the good stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, baseball wasn't even a thought in my mind. But I'm in school and I'm working really hard, and I'm kind of pursuing the science fiction fantasy angle, and I'm trying to make pieces that are, of that genre. And at some point during the journey, I just realized that I didn't love it the way that I thought I was supposed to. Yeah, I kind of felt like the artwork that I was doing was supposed to kind of like tug on the heartstrings, and for whatever reason it wasn't. And it became kind of like a laborious thing. And it freaked me out because, if I'm in school and I'm, worried about not wanting to do this particular thing, like that's kind of bad. I want to be into what I'm doing. So senior year, I'm kind of floundering, and I'm not really sure where I'm going with I guess my career, or the career that I would have outside of school. And my portfolio class, which you take senior year, and it's kind of like the goal of it is to kind of build a portfolio of however many pieces that you can leave SVA or leave an art school behind, and then take to like an art director or whatever. It's stuff that you can show people to get your first professional work. And in this particular class, the teacher would assign very general stuff. He would kind of have like a buzzword or two, and he would let each student kind of go with it wherever they decided to go. And one of the assignments that he did early on was to illustrate a relationship. And for whatever reason, one of the first things that popped into my head was the relationship between a pitcher and a batter. And I explored it a little bit, and I thought, okay, you know what? Maybe this is a chance to kind of do something for my dad. Let's do a painting of Mickey Mantle, a more mature version of what I was doing as a kid. And yeah, I did it. I really got into it. I really got into the research angle of it, because like I had mentioned, Mickey Mantle has to look like Mickey Mantle, and I know how anal baseball fans are in general. So Mickey Mantle's batting stance has to look right. His jersey has to look right. His build for whatever particular year I was depicting had to look right. So as I'm researching all of this stuff, I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it made for such a rewarding experience in, actually doing the painting, something that I had never felt before. So in the end, the painting, I think, looking at it now, it's a bit primitive, I guess, compared to like, I guess, how I think about this stuff now, but it was a big deal for me. And the teacher was really happy with it. The other students were happy, or I don't know if they cared or not, but they thought it was a good painting. And my dad loved it, which is also probably more important than any of the others. So something just kind of like clicked with that, and
Mm-hmm.
and from then on, with the exception of a couple of speed bumps here and there, it's been just baseball. I haven't wanted to paint anything else, like, at all, which is great. They're great for me, at least, because
Well,
there's just so much to explore.
we'll get into some of the works in a few minutes, but my favorite thing is when you got into the Hall of Fame.
Oh my God.
It's like you start out doing these paintings for your dad and as a kid, and now you're in the Hall of Fame, which to me is like pretty awesome.
It is, to be fair, though, to be, totally fair, you have to, as an artist, I think, you have to donate the piece to them. So
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, like, anyone could get into the Hall of Fame.
No, they're not taking anybody.
I take a little bit of pride in the fact that they actually sought me out, and they,
Right.
asked if I could donate something, and of course, absolutely. But yeah, they'll let anyone in that joint, so it's not that big of a deal.
The other one is the United States government, the United States Postal Service.
Right.
Got to be another one that's just it's like they want me to do a stamp. I mean, that to me that's pretty awesome. Which
yeah, I mean, the thing is, I wish I was actually able to do an actual stamp, because what they did with me was they just wanted to use my work in a booklet of stuff that was celebrating the baseball stamps that they had already done. So
Right.
It was all kind of like background stuff, which is fine. But to say that to say that the Postal Service, liked my work enough to put their name on it is pretty rad. And who knows? Maybe someday I can do a stamp. I don't know.
And then there's and then Tops also, which is another one.
Yeah.
You have cards, right? Aren't there
Yeah, I had some. That was a big deal. That was the feather in the cap, kind of like, telling my dad that my artwork was going to be on Topps cards. I think he really got a kick out of that. I mean, I did too, obviously. And I did a set of, or at least it was I guess a subset, part of a larger set of 20 paintings for them. And it's funny, like it's like they gave me the list of players that they wanted me to paint, and the title of the name of the set, I think, was like 150 years of baseball. So it's kind of a set that's celebrating the entire history of the game. And it's like I have this list of players and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you want me to do this guy, but I can't do this guy? Like, why don't you guys think about using this guy? But I have to remember that, they also want to sell baseball cards. So they're not necessarily interested in having like a bunch of obscure 19th century ball players that are important to the history of the game, but no one wants them.
Yeah.
I mean, no one except, people like me and you. So yeah, that was really cool. I was really honored to kind of like have my own baseball cards. It's really weird.
I didn't actually tell you. I sent you my show rundown and we talked and everything, but I didn't ask you. Do you have a baseball card collection?
I don't. So I got out of collecting. I think I escaped the collecting gene a little bit, or at least, you know what? You'll appreciate this, and we don't have to go any further into it. But the collecting gene just kind of went into, live Grateful Dead recordings. So that's that. Yes,
a lot of those.
But yeah, I have one thing that I collect, and it's kind of a long story, but I think you'll appreciate it. In that, I've always had kind of like. I've had an affinity for the Yankees, obviously, since I was born. My dad is a big Yankee fan. His dad was actually a New York Giants fan. And around the time that I turned, I don't know, 30, 31, something like that, I got it in my head to collect signatures from the entire 36 Yankees and 36 Giants. Reason being, around that time, my grandfather was born in 35. Oh, I'm sorry, 1905. Yeah, he was born in 1905. And I'd like to think that, we were kind of like at similar places in our lives, age-wise, where, he wasn't married yet. He didn't have any kids yet. So I figured, he's a big Giants fan. Giants are playing the Yankees in the World Series that year. It was probably an important series to him. I wasn't able to ask him that because he passed away when I was pretty young. I think I was 7 or 8 years old. So for whatever reason, I had this connection to those two teams. And I decided that I was going to get signatures from all of them. And I kind of wanted to get period signatures, or at least as close to period as I could get. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really specific about what they were on. Like I was fine with cuts as long as they were somewhat neat. I was totally cool with album pages. So I was actually able to, you know what? I'll get it because it's right here. I was able to get, or maybe it's not right here. No, it's somewhere. Okay. I was able to get like an album page that had Graig and DiMaggio and a few other players from the team as a gift from a friend, and I was like, all right, well, now I got to do this.
Nice
So,
friend.
yeah, very, very nice friend. Actually, I think he got it from Love of the Game. So Al had a part in that too. But I kind of started with that, and every national I try to buy one or two more. So it's a very slow process, but I'm getting there. Hopefully I can kind of put up a display or something like that at some point. But the
Well,
most important part of it is
some of
just,
them are going to be relatively easy. Like Bill Terry signed a lot
oh
of stuff.
yeah,
I have a Bill Terry autograph, and Hubble signed
right.
very frequently. But there's going to be other ones that are going to be kind of tough, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of Yankees that are a bit tougher. Obviously, the Gehrig is tough, but I have that. The Lazzari is a bit tough. I think is it the Jake Powell that is also a bit tough. And then with the Giants, I haven't looked as much into the Giants. I feel like Ott is a bit easier on like an album page or
Right.
something flat. But I do remember when people were clamoring for the single sign baseballs. But either way, it's like the hunt obviously is fun, and it's
Right.
kind of a way for me to kind of connect with my grandfather, who I never got to talk baseball with. I never, he knew I was an artist, but I don't think, he could have imagined that I would be painting the ball players that, he saw growing up,
Yep.
which it's cool for me. It's kind of like comforting in a weird way.
I 100% understand where you're coming from, and I do the same thing. My collection is geared towards teams and players that have some sort of family connection to me. So I did put a slideshow together, and so this is like the first 5 of these are this thing, which is your rendition of a photograph versus the American Tobacco Company, whoever artist that they put in to do. And as I was telling you before we started recording, as I was putting these together, my wife is looking over my shoulder and seeing this, and I was explaining to her what it is to me that I think, all of your work is the same feeling for me, is that you've taken a photograph and turned it into something much more. There's a 3-dimensionality to it. There's a life to it. There's sort of like I don't know, you capture the essence of the person, whereas the card is just sort of one-dimensional, flat. And this is one of the greatest cards in the hobby, the T206 Cy Young portrait with the green background. But I wish you were working for the American Tobacco Company.
Oh my God. Well, what's funny is that, how many of those, the T206s are based on, the Carl Horner photography.
Of course.
And I made like a weird goal that'll never happen, was that, maybe someday I will paint everyone from that set, as they appeared from, Horner or whatever Conlins were used, whatever. And like sometime down the line, I could have a museum show, or not a museum show, a gallery show that, it's just like portraits from the T206 set. And, knowing well that I would never ever be able to finish that, because that would just take way too long. And I'm not necessarily gonna be able to paint people like Deacon Philippe and whatnot, and Ed Doheny, and try to also pay my rent, which is a weird balancing act. But I love working from Horner's photography, especially because of that connection to that set.
Well, he's one of the unsung heroes of not only baseball cards, but Major League Baseball in general, because his photographs have sort of kept that alive, that baseball, his period. So yeah, but so is Graig Kreindler. So we'll move on.
You're being too nice.
So very few photographs of Addie Joss, because he died so young. But this one's very common, and I don't. This is not a T206, but T206 uses this also. this is a Sporting Life card. So I mean, this is another one where I'm like, I don't know how to explain it because I'm not an art person, an art historian, or haven't been trained in it. But there's like this feeling when I look at his face here, where you don't get. It's almost like he's got a blank stare in the card. But for you, he's got kind of this. You can almost get into his brain and think like, what is he mad about? What is he frustrated about? Why is he making this look? It's just there's sort of a life to it that I think that you captured here that doesn't really come out in the photograph, or certainly not in the baseball card.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's it. It's something that I really kind of set out to do. I don't know how it can be described, in a tangible way, but I think that I just try to think of these ball players, think of them as being real people, because they were real people, and that, they inhabited the same kind of space that I inhabit. They would breathe the same air. They had color and nuance to their skin, like stuff like that. It might not necessarily come across on baseball cards, and especially at a small scale, it might be tough to get that feeling. But at least with the painting stuff, it's very important to me to try to, I guess, show people that these guys were real people, and not just grainy black and white photographs.
Exactly. Now, Joss passed away, and then they did a game, sort of almost an all-star game, to, I guess, raise money for his family. And I think, am I right about this, that you were commissioned to do a piece from a photograph from that game?
Yes, I was. Yeah, there's a famous photograph by Louis Van Ooyen, who shot these guys. The game was at League Park in Cleveland, and it was that current Indians team, or I guess they were the Naps at the time, the Naps team playing a team of American League All-Stars. And it's the photograph shows how many people are in this image. I want to say maybe 12 or 13 main figures, and within those figures, you have some of the greatest players in history, with Ty Cobb and Walter Johnson, and Hal Chase is in there, Tris Speaker, and it's a very busy image because in addition to having those 15 or however many ball players as a focal point, behind them you have filled stands, so you have like hundreds of random fans kind of like peeking their face in, and they're all kind of wearing fedoras and in their Sunday best. It was a tough painting, and it took a long time to do. It was really tough. but
it's finished in the hands of the commission person, the person that commissioned it.
Yeah, I finished that one. I think I finished it at the end of last year, and got it out to him.
Relatively recent work.
Yeah. A lot of tears and sweat went into that one. Just thinking about it.
So my copy of this card, which I purchased, I'm not going to get into it, but it's creased, obviously. I got it at a very, very, very good price, but that's not the point. The point is that you've taken this, again, done the same thing, which is to add like humanity and life and three-dimensionality to a very familiar photograph, but one that I don't think, like I said, doesn't really have the humanity to it that is captured in your piece. So really enjoy this one.
Well, thank you. Lajoie is a fun character. I feel like he's kind of like Eddie Collins in that, we're talking greatest players of their era, and today they're not necessarily talked about all that much. But Lajoie really looks good in almost every photograph of him that I've ever seen. He has this look about him. I don't know what it is. Um, it just looks like a gamer, and I, I love painting him, even though it's, if I think of it, from a business sense, he doesn't necessarily sell as well as the Ruths
Right.
and Garrigs, but
Right.
I really love painting him.
Well, he might not be known to the general public that much, but he's known amongst baseball card people because his cards are very expensive.
That's very true. That's very true.
And then there's this one, which we got. I think we have one more card versus your work thing. So Mathewson is sort of like the gentleman of the game at this point. He's like college educated, I believe, is Bucknell University, and he's from farmers, but he's like this sort of gentleman farmer kind of man, and he comports himself with great dignity, but this photograph is almost like it's the hair is kind of messy, and it's like he's sort of intense, and I don't know. I guess there's a side to him that made him one of the greatest pitchers of all time. That's not so gentlemanly, which is that you kind of have to be a jackass on the mound, or you're not going to be very good. So again, it's like I think you kind of captured all this in one. The painting is again more life, more sort of just more of a story than the photograph.
Oh, thank you. I mean, consider that the photography that I'm working on for all of these guys. I mean, like this one being from Paul Thompson's, I forget what the name is, the Article Syndicate or whatever. So many of those portraits are they're sharp. The clarity is wonderful. They're easy to work from, and I think the painting itself, I think, is maybe 12 by 16 or something like that. And the tobacco card, what is it, like 2 inches by 3 inches? So
not even.
Yeah. But granted, the card is the T205, so you do have the foil border, which is pretty awesome. How did that get an authentic, by the way? Is there like paper loss?
Back damage on the
okay.
Like about a third of the back is missing.
Okay.
Which saved me an enormous amount of money, and I don't display the back, so I end up with this beautiful front in my display case.
Yeah.
And this is I'd say in baseball card history, certainly an iconic card, and it's one of my, I'd say, top 20 cards of all time. Not just in my collection, but of all the cards in the hobby, this is in my top 20.
Yeah. Are there any other T205s in that, or is it just specifically the Matty?
No, it's just specifically this particular card.
Okay. I mean, that set is so gorgeous, and obviously condition sensitive, but I've always been attracted to that set. Like that set and the I forget the catalog number, but the Ramleys that I guess predate that.
Yeah, I think it's T201, but yeah, the Ramleys with all that sort of ornate around that.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. And they use many of the same photographs, although I don't think Mathewson's photograph is this one. So this one, this was your choice. I picked out the first four, but you picked out this one, and I said, well, I don't have a card of him, so I had to go find the card. And then I noticed, obviously that is not my card, because if that was my card, I would be in a mansion somewhere. I looked it up. I don't remember because I was, researching the card itself, but I think it was in a heritage auction. It was like starting bid was like $20,000 or something. This is what's it called? The Punch Cigarros, Jose Mendez. And you mentioned you actually know who owns this card.
Yeah. The guy who owns it, I shouldn't mention his name, so I won't. But the guy who owns it has I want to say he might not have the complete set, but it's probably the closest to complete set of the Punch Cigaros cards, probably the most complete one that's out there. That set is insanely gorgeous. And the history of it is so interesting to me. I mean, I guess when I was learning about it, it was at a time where I really got into Negro and Latin American League players.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always had a thing for Mendez. I don't know why, but I think the way that contemporary writers would describe him, just something about that really tugs at my heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this particular image of him was just so cool. He almost looks like a ghost. There's just something about that portrait, and he's kind of like staring into your soul. And I really, really wanted to do a painting that kind of had the same effect as the card. But yeah, I think most of the cards from that set are like that. I mean, even though a lot of the players aren't staring at the viewer, there's just something about seeing those guys, whether they're Cuban or whether they're the black players from the United States. You get to see them at like such a young age,
Yeah.
whether it's Mendez or Pop Lloyd or Home Run Johnson, people like that. You don't see images of those guys from their playing days all that much, or if you do, they're usually a lot older. So yeah, I'm so attracted to this set as a whole.
So the original photograph is black and white, right?
Right.
But you've you've captured the real life color, this sort of really vibrant blue in the A and in the collar and in the hat. So one of the things that you've talked about in various media is that you spend a lot of time researching before you put I guess not pen to paper, but
same thing.
paint to canvas, I guess would be the way to. So can you describe how it is that this particular blue was the color that you chose for something that you had to sort of research to find out what it would be?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the at least when it comes to uniform stuff, some of the teams are a bit easier to research than others. Obviously, for the white leagues, it's pretty easy to find out what the colors are for the majority of those jerseys. But it's a little bit tougher, or a lot tougher, with the Negro and Latin American leagues. With this particular team, the Almendares, they were actually around in like the 50s and 60s, and they might even still be around today. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they were around then, and they were kind of always known as the Blues.
Right.
So you can actually find, not necessarily color photography, but you can find, advertising pieces that have their name and logo, and it's a specific blue. And I do my best to kind of, I guess, check with as many sources as I can to make sure that if I'm depicting them here in 1910, was it still blue in 1910? And I was kind of able to find that, yeah, traditionally the Almendares were using blue as their main color, and Habana was using red as their main color, and Cienfuegos, they were using green for the most part. So in essence, there's a lot of educated guessing going on with stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So the color and the tonality of the blue, I'm not 100% sure on, but I'm definitely 99% sure that it was blue.
Right.
And I guess I just kind of tried to think of blue fabric, what blue fabric might look like from that time period,
Right.
knowing that it's probably somewhat chromatic. At least it's not like a dull blue or a gray blue. And I'll just try to kind of reproduce that in the painting. And then of course, also reproducing, I guess, that color as it appears under certain light. So like with this, this photograph of Mendes, the studio portrait that was probably taken, in a photographer's studio with, with skylight and like northern exposure. So the light temperature is usually cooler. It's not really direct sunlight or anything. It kind of stays consistent throughout the day. So, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this part of the hat or this part of the collar, has to be a little bit cooler and lighter in temperature and in value. And, you kind of take that kind of thinking and you put it to use throughout the whole painting of how, like the planes of his nose are catching some of the skylight, as
Right.
are his cheekbones and like the muzzle. And it's almost like I think of it as like I'm sculpting them, like it's like a 3-dimensional treatment to making these guys. I don't know if I'm really explaining it right, or even making any sense for that matter. But just showing.
I understand completely what you're saying, and obviously it's the thought that goes into it is
right.
The part that I was trying to bring
it's
out.
The thought that counts.
There's a lot of thought.
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, the color, there's a bit of an artistic license with the tone of the color, but you're also you're making an intelligent decision based upon the facts that are presented to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing my best, but also knowing that I'm very OCD and anal, just like any baseball fan is. So I always want things to be perfect and historically accurate. Granted, I don't think I'm going to meet a 130-year-old Cuban who's going to say, listen, I knew Jose Mendez pretty well, and skin color, you did not get that right, my friend. But in my head, it'll happen.
I think you're pretty safe. So I went through and I picked out, I don't know, 5 or 6, and then you added a few. So we've got some of the pieces that don't relate necessarily to cards, although certainly baseball. And this is the oldest, I guess chronologically the oldest, capturing. I don't know when the pieces were done in your life, but chronologically this is the oldest one. So I'm going sort of in order of, this is pre-war. Ty Cobb sliding to third base against the Highlanders. I think it's in 1900, or was it? I forget. 13 maybe. I forget.
It was 1910.
10. Okay.
Yeah.
And my favorite part of this, and we'll get into other things, but my favorite part of this is, I don't know how you did this, but I am almost like I feel like the dirt's about to come into my face.
That's awesome.
I don't know how you add life to dirt, but you did. So,
oh, thank you.
Somehow.
Thank you.
And I forget where I did do the research on this. I looked up the game, and you did say, before we went on, you obviously did better research, that you knew exactly what happens on this play. But just tell me why this particular play, and obviously it's based on a photograph, but what about it was something that drew you to make this sort of like, it's almost like an action shot. It is an action shot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's fair to say that photo, I mean, it's very iconic. It's from Charles Conlon. Definitely his most famous photo, but I think it's got to be in contention for being one of the most famous baseball photos of all time. I feel like it's between that and, I don't know, maybe Nat Fine and his Babe Ruth shot. But yeah, I mean, I was just really attracted to this image because it shows Cobb in a light that I think most people know him for, being this competitor, this player who, will stop at nothing to beat you. Not considering all of like the side stuff that, Al Stump made up or whatever. And I just thought that this image kind of, embodies that perfectly. So yeah, I was able to kind of dig into this image to find out exactly, what game it's from. And I think Conlon mentions it in somewhere. I know it's in one of the books that was later put out of his work, but I don't remember where he originally said it. But it was a July 23rd game in 1910
Okay.
at Hilltop Park, and I had read that the weather that day was like it was very hot. Hot July day, and a storm was supposed to come in. So I kind of tried to treat the sky and the colors kind of in a way that made it feel a bit like that there's a lot of moisture in the air.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I just kind of treated it like all of the other paintings that I try to do, and that I just want it to be historically accurate, and I try to just do justice to Conlon's photography.
Yeah, researching the weather from that particular day. That's going deep.
No, I mean, as
Yeah.
as I think as a collector, uh, I know that you probably have a lot of useless information bouncing around in your head, and I do too. And it's like the same thing,
Part of why I started a channel so I could get it out of my head onto the
Put it on
screen.
record. Listen, it's either that, it's like random uniform colors, or it's like, the set list from a Dead show from 1971 or something like that. That's what's
Yes.
in my head.
All right. So different, different, whole different kind of feeling on this one, and I'm very intimately familiar with the original photograph. I've looked at it throughout my life because this is the saddest one I think of all the ones that I chose, because this is Garrick sitting on the steps of the dugout after he has taken himself out. Maybe not on that particular day, but he's now pretty much he's never playing baseball again, and there's the look on his face in the photograph, which is you've captured but added to, and it's just this. It's heartbreaking to me because for no fault of his own, he was the Iron Horse. He played 2,130 consecutive games, and was one of the most amazing players in baseball history. And here he is, all taken away in one in one fell swoop. He's suddenly now a sick, ill man sitting on the steps of the dugout watching other people play the game that he excelled at, and he can't do anything about it. And there's just this feeling of, it's sadness, it's dread, it's, just everything that's captured in the photograph. You've taken and turned it into a almost like a life. You've made me feel sad, Graig Kreindler. So
I'm sorry. That's not the
anyway,
intent.
so, I know why you chose the photograph, because there's so many different things you could talk about. But tell me about your sort of feeling about this particular work, and what you were looking to do here.
Well, I mean, it goes along with what you said. I mean, the whole idea of Garrig's career and how it kind of came to an end, whether it's this imagery or imagery of him during, Lou Gehrig Day and making his speech, that's the kind of stuff that really kind of transcends baseball and transcends the sport. Uh, there's something powerful about it. Like you had mentioned, being called the Iron Horse, and then, the profundity of an image of him sitting down and relaxing and not being out there. It's like this interesting confluence of a specific photograph that on its own, without context, could be considered unremarkable. But if you know anything about baseball and you know anything about Gehrig, it becomes very much something more. And I love kind of playing with that idea, or not playing with it, but I like painting stuff that kind of can represent that idea. Uh, seeing Gehrig, especially, somebody who I think is a pretty well-known face, uh, seeing it in color, not even just kind of like, you know, colorized like a Ted Turner thing, but like in actual like color,
Yeah.
which is what I really try to go for. Uh, I feel like automatically that kind of makes, if you're a baseball fan, at least I think it makes you feel something.
Yeah.
And combining that obviously with the narrative within, I think it's something that that has power. Something that I think artwork is capable of doing, and something that I always hope to have in my artwork, and it's really hard to put that into it or kind of show that. But I appreciate the fact that you felt that way, and I guess I'm doing something right.
Well, no question. But you mentioned the other piece that you've done, the other Graig piece, which I don't know if this is fair to say, but seems like might be one of your most well-known pieces, is the one from Lou Gehrig's day, or Lou Gehrig Day, whatever. Where I thought about putting that in here, but it felt like this one, they both speak to me obviously, and there's a lot about the Lou Gehrig Day work that there's so much detail there that we could spend an entire show on that piece alone. But I felt like this one was sort of like it maybe like a little bit more sort of visceral for me, the reaction to this. And so I feel like that I wanted to talk about this one pretty much more than any other piece, but we'll get to some other ones that are also pretty moving.
Well, what I like,
sure.
I like about the Gehrig one, sorry.
Yeah.
What I like about it though is that it's also a quiet moment. There's something special about that to me, and that baseball is not just a portrait of a ball player or an action shot. You can also have these very pensive, quiet moments, and I like to think that that artwork is like one of my favorite definitions of artwork is when you take something that's mundane and you make it profound. And I feel like this image, the photograph, the original photograph especially, I think it really captures that. So that kind of stuff I absolutely love. Love painting, even though visually it might not be as exciting or as engaging as other stuff, but to me there's like a lot of pathos in it, or pathos. I forget how it's pronounced, but yeah.
Pathos is one of the words. I don't know if I used that word in the rundown, but that was one of the words that was going through my head.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's funny. So, yeah, you chose this one, and I understand why. Obviously, it's the Mick. And it's Mickey Mantle, the lighting, the sunlight. It's just you did your magic with dirt again around his feet. But last night I was looking at it a little more closely, and I thought to myself, what's really like the thing about this piece of work, this piece of art to me that kind of I didn't notice right off the bat, but the Campanella, that is Campanella, I assume. I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Between the blue, which you did your research on, but there are Dodger hats, so you know the blues.
Right.
But just there's a life to Campanella in that catcher's pose that it almost speaks to me more than the Mick, which
wow.
sounds like sacrilege.
No, well, only if you're a Yankee fan. But yeah, that's cool to hear. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just the color?
Yeah, I mean, it's the color, but it's also like I said multiple times now already, is the sort of the three-dimensionality about it, and that he's like not the center of the piece, but he also they I don't know how many months you spent on Campanella, but
you don't want to know.
You don't want to know. But it's also this is another one of those we talked about before, but we haven't seen one until now, which is the background of hundreds of people, so.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, this one was a real challenge, and I was very much attracted to it at first because of the light, which you pointed out. That's like that's right in my wheelhouse. That's the kind of stuff that I absolutely adore, when there's just kind of an interesting design that's carved out by light. Mantle, to me, it's kind of like Mantle is almost unimportant. I mean, it's unimportant that it's Mickey Mantle to me, because that could easily be Gil McDougald, and I'd be very happy to paint him like in that exact same thing. But just having this lit bat and his shoulders, and how that kind of moves forward from the crowd in the background that's completely like in shadow, and then having some of the warmth from the light that's by his feet kind of bouncing back into his leg there and bouncing back into the dirt. I mean, it's one of those images that I see it on Getty's website, or I think that was who I licensed it from. And I see it in color. I just see it immediately. And it's just one that I jumped on. And the guy, I actually delivered this to the client who commissioned it, I don't know, maybe a month ago or so. And I was so happy to kind of get rid of it, because I needed to make space in the studio, and I'm tired of looking at it. But at the same time, it's like I thought that it kind of embodies so much of what I love about painting these guys. So it was a fun one to do, and frustrating, but fun.
Well, I can imagine the client was pretty overwhelmed. Do you have a date on this? It's a World Series game.
Yeah, it's Game 5 of the '53 World Series. So that's believe it was Mantle's grand slam. I don't remember the inning off the top of my head, but it's like one of those. It's one of those great, these great times in Ebbets Field where during the World Series, it's like you have half of the field in shadow because the sun is behind home plate or whatever, and you're getting like these huge shadow shapes, kind of like in the diamond, so to speak. And at the same time, because there are windows, in the upper kind of deck, on the top of the upper decks, I mean, at Ebbets Field, you're also getting light go through those. So that light is what you have in front of Mickey. It's just kind of like this little window where you had this little opening, and this beam of light coming in, which is totally unique to Ebbets Field. Yeah, I love that stuff. I love it. Oh, fun light.
So before we started recording, you told me about a little bit about the I guess it's a chain link fence behind the fence that sort of was your bane of your existence for probably many months.
Yeah.
So it's Clemente making a catch. It's just classic baseball. But the amusing thing to me, and I don't want to laugh at it, but it's just sort of, it makes it more enjoyable. Not no pun intended, is the enjoy life thing, which is I guess a beer advertisement in Milwaukee. And so I all these things going on, and then I'm just focused on the enjoy life. So it's like Clemente again, like Graig, tragic figure, but for the time that he was on Earth, was the epitome of enjoying life.
Right. Right.
Just the way he played the game emanated joy. So I feel like it's the perfect message for this particular baseball event.
Well, what's funny is that the woman who commissioned it, her dad was in the hobby, big Clemente collector, like a lot of high end stuff, and he had passed away, and I think the majority of that stuff kind of went to auction, and she wanted a painting that would kind of honor him in a way. So she knew it would be Roberto Clemente because he was a big Clemente fan, and she saw this image and she saw the Enjoy Life, and she just said that that's something that like her dad used to say a lot, and she's like, I have to get the painting done of this particular image. So it registered with her, on a unique level too. And like I told you before we started recording, I just, the juxtaposition of Enjoy Life next to the effort that went into the chain link fence and how much I was crying about it is pretty funny.
Well, is the original photograph in color?
No, it's black and white.
Oh wow! So you had to. There was that part of it too. But so you managed. I mean, obviously you suffered through this, but you managed to do the chain link fence in a way that you can see through it, that that it's a chain link fence.
Right.
So that, I mean, to me, that was, for all the blood, sweat, and tears, you accomplished the goal. So
Oh, I appreciate it. I mean, this might sound kind of weird, but it's funny because the fence itself, was the hardest part of the painting, which, I'd mentioned, but there are actually certain parts of the fence that I had to fudge a little bit that weren't exactly perfect. And I shouldn't even be admitting this in a public forum, but I look at the painting and like, that's all I see. I see what I wish I could have fixed or made right.
It's the curse of any, not just art, but what I could have done better. I'm a lawyer. When I finish a trial, what I could have done better is always an issue.
Yeah.
So the perfectionist in you is what makes you great. So I mean, that's part of the curse of that is to be haunted by it. But oh well.
Being haunted is a good way to put it.
I don't think anybody's complaining. Certainly not the client who commissioned the piece, I'm sure.
Hopefully not. I think she was happy, so that's good.
So we have this is one that you chose.
Yes.
And again, you're the lighting, the sunlight. It's Willie Mays signing autographs for kids. You got the arm coming in, so it's a kid, and it's the look on his face. For a player who's supposed to have played with such happiness and energy and stuff, he could be a little surly at times too. I think that there's an element of impatience in this expression that he has that I think you kind of picked up on and maybe I don't know, just captured it in a way that maybe the original photograph doesn't.
Oh, thank you. Well, what's funny about this image? So it's a image from Neil Leifer, famous Sports Illustrated photographer. What is originally in the photograph that I kind of left out, sorry, the little piece of paper that the kid is handing him, you can actually see Mays's autograph on that back side of it. And I'm thinking, why is he handing him, a sheet and it's already signed? And I'm thinking, is Mays handing it back to the kid? I was like, I don't know if it looks like that. I mean, maybe like the kid just wanted it signed again. So like in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so the kid wanted it signed again, and maybe Mays noticed that or something like that, and maybe that's why he's making that face. Just a scenario that I totally made up in my head and probably isn't even remotely true. But I decided to leave it out, to leave the signature out, just so there wouldn't be extra questions about it, I guess.
Right. I now that you mention it, it's possible that he has just handed it back to him.
You think so?
To me, it looks like the kid is handing it to him.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the kid's picking up, but I don't know. I mean, it's a moment in time that we'll probably never know the answer to, and unfortunately, Willie Mays left us not too long ago.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I've done this before where if there's a player or a play or moment or whatever that I've painted before, if it's famous, if when it was possible, I would reach out to a player or the players involved to ask them stupid questions about it. Stuff that I kind of wanted to know so I could make the painting right. So like with Bobby Thompson, his shot against Ralph Branca and the Dodgers that year, uh, I wrote Bobby Thompson to ask him whether he knew if the stadium lights were on,
Right, right.
because I couldn't find that. I couldn't find that information at the time. And obviously, this is when he was still alive. And he wrote me back very quickly, and it was fine. But I was thinking, what would it be like if I had, gone up to Willie Mays, shown him this image, and asked him, why do you look that way? Like, do you remember signing this for that kid, on May 31st of 1964? He'd probably look at me like I had 7 heads. But, it's due diligence, I guess.
Is this, do you know what stadium this is?
I was at Shea, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It was a big double header at Shea. And I think it was actually, it was a pretty big series for them, because I think they were expecting, between the two games, they're expecting like 140,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So that was big for them, totally outdrawing the Yankees at the time still, even though the Yankees were, World Series bound that year.
Well, 64, it's the first year of Shea, so
yeah,
that the energy of a new ballpark is always good for getting asses in the seat, so to speak.
Yeah, and especially Willie Mays coming back, to New York from San Francisco.
Element of it.
Yeah.
So, as I was telling you before, the first time I ever saw this was you put it in your Twitter account. Of course, I don't think either one of us are on Twitter anymore. I know I'm certainly not.
Oh, that place is a cesspool.
Well, we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
Back in the good old days.
Right.
When it wasn't. I saw this, and the thing about it is the thing that struck me originally was the sunlight off of the helmet, and just kind of how does an artist capture that with such detail that it's literally looks like you can feel the sun coming up. You almost like you want to cover your eyes so you don't get blinded by it.
Oh man, thank you.
And then I thought about it more, and I was thinking about it this week. That there's so much more, and again, it's like reading into the work is the fun of it, obviously, but knowing the game, knowing the history of the player, knowing the background, and this isn't Philadelphia. This is Wrigley Field, and he's playing for Philadelphia, and he's this full of life, amazing baseball player who's just full of personality, and he's a trailblazer, and he's dealt with all the nonsense in the minors, and now he comes up to the majors, and he's the rookie of the year. But Philadelphia tortured this guy, and it's almost like I feel like there's a look on his face of befuddlement. Like, what do I have to do to why is this game that should be so much fun? You've got all the green around him, so it's almost like he's on a baseball field, and why am I not having more fun doing this?
Right.
It's kind of like looking at it here. And, there's all the art stuff on this is amazing to me. The shadows, you got the bat under the arm there, and it's just, I don't know. This I had to bring this one into the few that I was able to put in the slideshow because of all the things that it says to me, and I just kind of wanted to communicate that. So.
Well, that's amazing, because no one has ever said that about this painting before. But yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with Alan's background and how he was treated and everything, then yeah, it's like the image becomes more powerful with that context. And specifically, I actually never had even thought about it in that way, because to me, the original photograph that I saw, it's like a black and white slide. I was never able to find out who actually shot it, but I was just thinking, oh, this painting is going to be completely about the light on his helmet and the light coming back into his glasses. Like that's what I saw. And you're able to pick more out of it, which is wonderful. That I like, if people can do that with anything that I do, then that would make me so happy.
Well, I it's just, like I said, again, the research part of it and knowing a little bit about the game helps too. But the way you sort of put your work into it before it even gets to that point, and I guess it's easier to know the exact red to get into a Phillies helmet than it is to 1910.
Yeah,
lettering on a uniform. But I think you got the red here. The red really bounces off the canvas here, and that to me also is another one that really made this one kind of really compelling.
Thank you.
And this one, you said we before we came on, you said this is one of your earlier works, and you like you just said before, the things about it that you want to change, but this is one of the great photographs in baseball history as far as I'm concerned, because it's just not just the joy of winning the World Series, but like he's flying through the air. And Brooks Robinson is the greatest third baseman of all time, and he was a magician in the field, and it's almost like he's a magician here because he can elevate himself to that just for that split second that the photograph is taken. And I don't know, I guess you're your own worst critic in many respects, like all of us are, to our own work. But I think you got everything here that the photograph gets and more, because you three-dimensionalized it again and gave it some life that really speaks to me in many levels here.
Thank you. I wish, again, I shouldn't be admitting this in public, but it's like I wish I could see the same thing, because still in my head I look at this and I just see the stuff that I wish I did better. I think it's a like a nice painting, and it's like a nice example of my, I guess, my earlier stuff. And yeah, I wish that I had it back. Like I said, I wish I just give me like a couple hours with it. It'll be so good. You like it now, it'll be so good after that.
There are wishes. The people wish that they could do something like this in their lives. So there's that too, from the other angle. And this is our last slide, and I guess the last piece of work that we're going to look at, and this is the most modern of them. I lived this season. I was 22 years old, and it was one of the greatest summers of my life, because it was the mid 80s, and the world was in front of me. And this season to me was just so special because they dominated from start to finish, and I didn't know it at the time that they were, as I thought they were a bunch of kids having a lot of fun. I didn't realize they were a bunch of men, destroying their bodies and doing drugs and screwing around with people. And they were fun to watch. They were a fun team to watch. This is the 86 Mets. This is Gary Carter coming out of the dugout. I believe this is the moment where the Mets win the game. Game 6, of course, the infamous Bill Buckner game, but there's so much more to it than that. And I'm familiar with the original photograph, but the part of the reason that I took this one out was because not only the personal connection to the 86 Mets, but also Carter, who, he was very distinct from the rest of the team. The team was a bunch of partiers, and even the veteran guys like Hernandez would go out drinking and smoking and doing whatever else they were doing. But Carter was like the family man, man of God, who was almost like the adult in the room. And he was almost like the dad of the team. And I think some guys didn't like him that much because they didn't understand him. And they thought he was, too stuffy, or, but not stuffy. I mean, he's a very, personality. He had a lot of personality. But this piece to me is almost the exact personification of who Gary Carter was, and I appreciate him more now that I'm 40 years later. But this is who he was. He's just pure joy. He's wearing his catcher's gear. He's leading the charge out of the dugout, and it's a moment. It's one of the greatest moments in baseball history, as far as I'm concerned. Boston Red Sox fans would disagree, but and what you did was you just nailed it. It's exactly what I would say. If Gary Carter's family saw this, they would be overjoyed.
Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, the painting itself, I did to commemorate. I want to say, I think it was the 50th anniversary of the Mets, and it was for a charity. It's for the baseball assistance team, which was a very cool charity to be a part of. But yeah, I mean, I saw this image, on Getty or something like that, and I'd been familiar with it. But the look on Carter's face, how big that smile is. It's infectious, And I saying that as a Yankee fan, I remember clearly when the Mets won in '86 and how like distraught I was, which sounds ridiculous, but I was 6 years old. But yeah, I just feel like the image just really kind of encompassed that moment so well and captured Gary so well, just because of that damn smile.
Well, I didn't intentionally do this, but I seem to have pulled out tragic figures. Maybe that's part of the poignancy of it. Is that of that team? I had Gehrig and Carter and Clemente, and Gary Carter died of a brain tumor in his 50s, I believe it was, and very sadly, and of all the guys on that team, he's the last guy you would have expected to have died young.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are still around for better or for worse, doing whatever they're doing to their bodies. Darryl Strawberry is in a fantastic place right now, and his Doc Gooden is not. But
right.
That's for another show. But Carter, is in many respects a tragic figure because of that. And I think that in looking back in history, I should have been nicer to him as a fan, and his teammates should have been nicer to him. And but he gets the last laugh, so to speak, because he's a Hall of Famer and now a pretty beloved guy. So
yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I was talking to a friend about this semi recently. The Mets still haven't retired his number yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, but he only played 4 years with them, I think.
Right.
So I mean, yeah. One of them, of course, is this moment in their team history, but I think he only played 85, 86, 87, and 88. I think he was gone by 89.
Was he gone by 89? No?
Yeah, he might have played part of 89. I forget, but it was the end of his career. And that's, again, he was an older person by this point and lived through, a lot more baseball than his teammates. But so there we go. That was a very small sampling of a very just strikingly amazing portfolio, sir. And I joked in the beginning. I think it was off camera. I joked about the old skit on Saturday Night Live with Chris Farley's show. He gets to interview Paul McCartney. Like, remember when you were in the Beatles? I said to my wife last night, I said, just make sure I don't turn into Chris Farley in this interview.
You definitely did not turn to Chris Farley. And please don't ever think of me as being Paul McCartney.
Well, as baseball art historian, you are the Beatles. So, that's not, I'm not puffing here. I'm not blowing smoke here. This is true. And, I mean, for somebody to have been in the Hall of Fame, have a stamp collection, be in the stamps, you know, I know you're on MLB Network. Tops, all that stuff. I mean, it's as a baseball historian, amateur historian, and baseball card collector, just to see your work and what it means to me, I am honored, sir, to have been able to do this with you, and I do very much appreciate you coming on my show, my tiny little YouTube show.
Oh, please. It's my pleasure. As you know, I'm a big fan of you and a big fan of the show. And I don't know if I had told you this, but I actually have your show on a lot while I'm working. Because just it's weird. It's like having friends in the room, like talking about baseball cards. It's something that's very comforting to me.
Well, it means you don't have to turn it off very often because they're all like an hour and a half long.
But that's great for me.
It's like, when I was a DJ and I had to go to the bathroom, I put on a full side of an album that was 16 minutes long or whatever, Terrapin Station side 2.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
One other thing, and I should remark about this because he would be mad if I didn't, that there are 3 people in the world that I know named Graig, Graig.
3?
Of course, Greg Nettles, who I don't know, although I have met him. And you, of course, and Greg Miller, who has a channel called Midlife Sports Cards.
Oh, yeah.
Who you should meet at the National or wherever it is that the 2 of you should meet, because Greg is one of the best guys in the hobby, seriously. And just you 2 would hit it off. Trust me.
Any fellow Greg, I'm very happy to meet.
And his dad named him because of Greg Nettles.
Same, yeah.
And he collects Greg Nettles cards.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's kind of a hobby thing. So you could have Greg Palooza hanging out together.
Oh my God, that'd be wonderful. Are you going to be at the National this year?
I'm going to be at the National. I am going to be I'm in the hotel right across the street. I guess it's called. I haven't been to Chicago. I've been to Chicago, but I haven't been to the Chicago sports show.
Oh, okay.
National. So we'll see. But anyway, I again really, really appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much. And it was just wonderful being able to go through and talk about these particular works with you and get the details and wonderful things. So,
thank you, Dan.
Viewers, we're going to have another show next week. It will not be Graig Kreindler or anybody of that stature, but it will be a fan and a baseball card collector. And, we're just, I'm having a great time with this channel, and I just love the opportunities that it's given me. And this is, of course, one of the great opportunities. So thanks, Graig, and thanks, viewers. And we will see you next week.